Last week, many companies woke up to the Microsoft Windows blue screen of death. I don't know why I'm smiling. It's a terrible thing, and it was due to a reported bug by a software company called CrowdStrike, their latest security release. Flights got canceled, passengers got stranded in airports, businesses could not serve their customers. It was estimated by a cyber insurance company that Fortune 500 companies lost about $54 billion over that bug. Now, earlier, due to a data breach, AT&T customers, actually I should say 109 million AT&T customers found that their call and text logs data fell to the wrong hands due to a cyber attack, due to hackers. The emergency services of the city of Dallas last year were brought down due to a what's called a ransomware attack last year. Now, Americans today are more worried about identity theft and scams and spam than they are about being murdered. Are we relying too much on technology? In today's episode, I'm going to try and answer that question. And I have a guest this week. My guest is Beth Ziesnis, or Beth Z, also known as your nerdy best friend. And she's my nerdy best friend. Beth is not only a friend of mine, but she's my go-to person, anything related to new technology. She always tries new things. So together, we're going to tackle the central question. Can we trust technology? Right after this. Welcome to The Trust Show. I'm Yoram Solomon, your host, the author of the Book of Trust, and facilitator of the Trust Habits Workshop. My mission is simple. I want to help you form habits that build your trustworthiness, because the answer to this question will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can I trust you? And we are back with Beth Z, my best nerdy friend. I should say, my nerdy best friend.
There you go.
I met Beth in one of our, so it's Beth Z, but it's really Z stands for Ziesnis. Am I pronouncing it right?
So close. Ziesnis. Ziesnis.
Ziesnis. That's what I said. Beth Z. We'll stick with
So
Beth
close.
Z. I met Beth when she came to our chapter, and I thought, if there's somebody who's going to play the role of a nerd, that's it. That's how you do it. This is what it should look like in the dictionary. Beth, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I've always respected the way you represent what you talk about and how dedicated you are to this topic. And it's really important to me that you have this work and you put it out there, because it's you embody what you talk about.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just for all of you to know, Beth is who I reach out to whenever I have a technical question. I'm pretty technical myself, but when we need to figure out something in technology, that's who I call. And really, the trigger for this episode this time was what just happened with CrowdStrike. I wasn't going to touch technology in the near future, but with what happened to CrowdStrike, and I'm going to quote from what they said, an update of CrowdStrike's Falcon sensor product went very wrong. A company, a cyber insurance, which apparently we have cybersecurity insurance companies, called Parametrics, said that Fortune 500 companies estimated $5.4 billion losses because of this outage. Beth, what can you tell us about this?
One of the first things that I thought of when this happened. So for those of you who don't know, the problem was that Windows machines were basically bricked, meaning they were turned into bricks that you couldn't work with because it just kept repeating the blue screen of death. And if you have worked with a Windows machine, you know what that is, where everything goes blank and it just says, you're screwed. Basically, that's what it says.
In different words.
In a few words, yeah. And so this, what they thought was going to be an innocuous update that had nothing to do with the actual security, ended up creating this blue screen of death cycle. And so the repair of that is incredibly tedious. If you've ever had to rebuild your own computer, if you've ever had to go into safe mode, if you've ever had to go into that horrifying little DOS box and type in the reg and the sys, I don't even know. It's scary for
Yeah.
normal people. And it's really scary if you have a whole bunch of computers who are in the same spot. So some companies who ran the software behind the scenes, and a lot of huge companies used it, who ran the software behind the scenes, they booted up their computer like they were supposed, like they normally do, boom, totally locked up. Some companies didn't boot up all their computers at the same time, so they were able to recover faster. And bless Southwest's heart, they have older computers, which they were criticized for roundly in their series of problems couple years ago.
I think it
Last
was
year,
last December.
yeah, it was last December when they had huge problems based on their antiquated technology. So their antiquated technology kind of saved them, but poor Delta, not so saved. They're still recovering. I think today the headlines were that they're more or less recovered, but we're talking several days of really, really, really intense, bad technology problems. And bigger companies had to scramble to get more and more and more of their machines to get out of this blue screen of death cycle. And smaller companies, I can't even imagine how panicked some smaller businesses were about just being offline.
Did you have an issue with that?
No, I'm a Mac person and I bought a Windows machine not too long ago because I wanted to try out Microsoft Copilot, which is, of course, their version of ChatGPT. And I bought one just for that reason. And I used it for about 17 minutes during the demo I did. And I put it over there and it's over there. So it wasn't a Windows update, but curiously, this same company, CrowdStrike, has been criticized for causing problems with other devices as well. So, but it was very quiet and it wasn't as widespread. It was a Linux, I don't know how to pronounce it, that off
Linux.
that one that, yeah, that people create things on their own and they're more DIY and they're much more nerdy. And I have a feeling that you have done such a thing because you use kind of, I want to build it the way I want to build it kind of software, I do believe.
Yeah. Yes.
But most of us want a push button thing.
Yeah.
And so we go Windows or Mac. And it just, the complications here are enormous. And this is not the first time that CrowdStrike has had this problem.
So I do run a Windows machine. By the way, I did not remember that you run Mac. And in fact, now that I am aware that you run Mac, this is all the time we have today. Thank you. Okay. No, I have a few Windows machines. I was actually pretty scared. I typically don't turn them off at night. And that night I did turn them off and they were off for one whole day. For a completely different reason. I was flying an F-18, but that's a different story. And yes, and to be on the safe side, I had my daughter turn on her Windows machine. Nothing happened. I had my second daughter turn on her Windows machine. I had my wife turn on her Windows machine before I decided it's safe enough for me. This is how I protect my family.
Huh. That's like the king saying, everybody eat a bite of that food to see if it's poisoned.
Exactly.
Or I take a bite.
I also let them eat my food first.
But if you weren't a CrowdStrike subscriber,
right?
It's one of those things that runs behind the scenes with a lot of companies that we had never heard. It's not a household name by any stretch of the imagination. And most of us don't have it on our home computers at all. But it's just, if we're a business, medium to large, definitely, and some smaller businesses, you may have used that service and you may have been really affected by this.
Right. So let me ask you this. I remember the early days of computers. Programs were pretty short. The big computers had 64 kilobytes of RAM. And right now, 64 kilobytes of RAM is 1/16th of a picture. Not even that. Um, we have huge programs today. Is it impossible? Is it getting impossible to clean all the bugs before you release something?
I think everything is in constant beta. I think right now it is almost impossible. That's why everything updates all the time. And I keep an eye on those updates as they're coming in. Like on my phone, I don't install updates automatically. I end up with 100 at a time because I do it every week or two. And I look through every single line and say, what are they changing? And I try to make sure that I have the ability to back off, because the complications are not only are the complications inside each internal one incredibly complicated, but the cross pollination ideas. So everything's going great with your Microsoft Office, and then something that hooks into Microsoft Office does a little thing, and then all of a sudden you're screwed. So that's what CrowdStrike did. It wasn't Microsoft Office, or it caused a problem with something else, which caused the breakdown. And it's I can't even imagine how anybody would be able to, any company, any smart people, huge corporations, huge IT departments, huge programming places, can keep track of all the little things. It's like the butterfly effect, right? You change one little eyelash over here and it changes the entire face over there, and you don't even know it until it's out there, and then people find it.
So it is getting harder, and I agree with you. I mean, if I look at my Adobe Creative Suite, Creative Cloud Suite, all the tools that I use are in beta, because at least, let's say, at least I acknowledge the fact that I'm in beta, rather than thinking that I'm in a production version that really is a beta, because they haven't cleaned that up altogether. Every now and then we get a new software version, and immediately you get a, zero point 0.01 version to it because it fixes bugs in the previous one.
Yep. I always say nobody has ever had a unique error, right? If something goes wrong on your computer, somebody another time has had that same problem. However, when they're releasing these big giant updates, or even small updates, a lot of times they don't know what A plus B plus X on your computer is that will unearth that bug. And so there are bug bounties and things like that, I used to have a bug bounty. Basically, when I release a new website, I'm like, let's have a find the typo contest.
Yeah.
And I just say, find the problems on my site and I'll give you a prize. So I've got a bug bounty, but they release bug bounties saying, hey, if you see something, let us know so that we will pay you a lot of money. And then don't tell anybody if you could.
So that's one aspect of it. This is when bugs happen. They are not intentional. If I go back to my focus here is on trust and whether we can trust technology, the first thing that comes to mind is the component of competence. Is it becoming something that requires a level of competence that no single company or a group of developers, programmers can have, because programs are becoming so complex?
I believe there's a couple of factors there. Number one, I do think that competence is almost impossible. Full 100%, we're releasing this and we know it's going to work competence. But I think another thing is the race to produce now and the race to innovate. And so the competition is promoting, I think it's there. I think it's there. Let's put it out there. Oh, wait, it's not there. Oops.
Yeah.
And most of those errors are very small, but in this case, the error was catastrophic. And I saw one of the things that I was worried about, the very first thing that my question is he lying, the CEO of CrowdStrike, about it being a bug and an accident, or was there a cyber attack? Because, oh gosh, I hate the negative side of the world. I'd rather make cat videos and see all kinds of AI doing, fun stuff like that. But I have to acknowledge that the ability to take down entire systems is there and is quite viable. And I was like, I wonder if this was a hack, was a cybersecurity incident, and he's lying. So I went to our mutual friend, Tracy Brown. She's a world-class world-class body language expert and fraud busting speaker. And I said, it was like 6 something in the morning where she was. And I wrote to her and I said, tell me, is he lying? And she looked at the video that he did for a couple of different stations and said, he's not lying, but he's really, really nervous and he's holding something back. And I'm like, he's also going to be unemployed. Heads are going to roll. That company, how can that company survive with what happened to Delta for a week? They had so many problems. How everybody, anybody is going to sue them into oblivion because of this little mistake that they made.
Yeah. By the way, when I heard the CEO speak, I immediately didn't trust anything simply because of his hairstyle. Yes, okay.
Yep.
So go ahead.
No,
So this, so we'll leave his hairstyle for now. So this is unintentional. There was no intent. Let's assume there was no intention. And it's a bug, and systems are so complex, and not all contexts can be comprehended by one company. But then there is something else. Then there is cyber attacks, and cyber attacks that take place for different reasons. Mostly to make money off of the victims. So AT&T had, what we thought was a recent attack turned out to be something that happened in April. And again, I'm reading from their own disclosure that said data from 109 million customer accounts containing records of calls and texts from 2022 was illegally downloaded in April. They sat on it for 3 months. Of course, what they said was that the FBI asked them because some of that information was very sensitive, which, doesn't change the fact that information is in the wrong hands. We are seeing a growth in cyber attacks. We're seeing, the city of Dallas was pretty much brought to its knees, including 911 services, because of a cyber attack that held the computers hostages. So, should we stop trusting computers or technology because there are bad actors?
We can't. In 2024, we can't. Having trust issues is great. However, we depend on these systems. And should we 100% trust them? Absolutely not. We shouldn't 100% trust any of these things, whether it's, like, oh, look, you can make a picture, you can make a cat video in 14 seconds with this. Just give me your email address. Really? That's how you do it, huh? That doesn't sound so good. Or I'm trusting you with all my data. Please don't mess up. You're a giant company. And they do. Now, with AT&T's case, if I recall correctly, that was also a third-party software, and they gained access to AT&T and a bunch of other things. And that third-party software, I believe it was called Snowflake. That third-party software, and I may be wrong on this, so just, call me a liar when you do the summary. That's okay. But even if this wasn't the story, this is definitely a case that happened. The other company said, oh, it wasn't really us. It was because people use bad passwords. And so because some people use bad passwords, this is what happened with Ancestry.com. Oh, no, 23andMe. Sorry, wrong one. 23andMe. They're like, oh, it wasn't us. It was because everybody else used bad passwords, and their passwords were taken. So with 23andMe, millions of people's DNA pretty much was stolen, including mine. My account was not breached, but somebody who's related to me, their account was breached because of their problem and their bad passwords. And so my information was stolen in that, and 23andMe and said, We didn't do it. Wasn't us. It was you not doing the passwords right. So that's the same thing. A company, and oh gosh, I'm really hoping I get these names right, called Snowflake, I believe, is one of those companies you haven't heard of, but it runs a lot of things for a lot of big companies. They had several different companies that were accessed because of this event. So AT&T says it's not us, it's Snowflake. Hope it's them. Snowflake says it's not us, it's you. So this finger pointing certainly doesn't lead to trust. But that's one of the huge problems is there are so many factors that go into security, including your own security and the people who are connected to your security systems. And we all know password management is one of the hardest things that we can manage. So, yes, a company might not technically be at fault, but A, they have used something that's at fault, and B, they don't tell us sometimes when it happens. So we sit here and we're like going about our lives, and then we realize that everything we've had at AT&T is now in someone's hands, and it was several months ago. And AT&T says it's not us. Snowflake says it's not us. Who is it? Who is it? How do we
And
get?
does it matter? And does it matter? Because
It doesn't
if
matter.
they sat on that information for 3 months, I lose trust in them because I don't feel one of the other components of my trust model is personality compatibility and empathy. And I don't feel that they really care about me. I feel that they first care about protecting their own behind rather than disclosing enough to me. I feel cheated when I learned that this happened 3 months ago and you didn't say a word.
Exactly.
You brought I have to segue for a second. If you remember, Wi-Fi initially had a security protocol that was called WEP, and WEP was wireless or wired equivalent privacy. That was what WEP stood for. And then at the Wi-Fi Alliance, we and in IEEE, we developed what's called WPA, Wi-Fi Protected Access. I remember there was a report that just came out. I was part of the group that worked on developing Wi-Fi and security and others. But I remember going down to San Diego to give a lecture, and that was maybe a day after UC Berkeley found that they can break WEP within, I don't remember if it was 48 hours or something like that. And what I found myself is standing in front of an audience, and the first question is, well, they can break it. So how secure is Wi-Fi? And my next question was, how many of you even enable WEP? And it was only 20% of people there even enable it. 80% did not enable it, but complained about the security of it. And, something that can be broken into in 48 hours is still more secure than something that doesn't need breaking in. You leave the door open. But you said passwords. So passwords reminds me of one of our last phone conversations after LastPass was hacked. And what I found from them, again, from their website, is from their letter, rather, the threat actor exploited a vulnerability in third-party software. It's not us. It's a third-party software, bypassed existing protocols, and eventually accessed non-production development and backup storage environments. I remember when you and I talked about that, you told me something that made me laugh. You said that you've been with LastPass more than you've been with your husband. But with so many accounts that we have online, and you can't use the same password to all of them, because if it's breached once, all of a sudden you give somebody access to all of them. So you have to change them. You have to have some password management software. That has to be something that you can trust, but it wasn't. So tell our audience, so what do you think about that one? Now that we are done drinking after it happened.
I'm not done drinking. It hurts. Here's what happened. I'll give us a brief rundown. and and it goes back to trust, because they broke my trust more than they broke my passwords, because they found a problem several months before they even hinted to us that there was a problem. And they hinted to us that there was a small problem, and it was a giant problem. Somebody now to this day has a copy of my locked password box and everybody's password vault. They have a copy. Now, are they working really hard to get into everybody's? Nope, because we haven't had widespread. There are some stories that I read that the cyber criminals were targeting high net worth people who are into Bitcoin. And
Good. I'm not into Bitcoin.
yeah, I'm not into Bitcoin, but they were going into the wallets, the crypto wallets, and lots of money was stolen. And the thing that a lot of those people had in common was that they were with LastPass and when the vaults were stolen. But it was the entirety of all of our passwords that are locked in their vault that they stole. And when they get into the vaults of people, they will be able to have access to all the passwords. Now, there were some protections in place, kind of, but there weren't very many, and there weren't very many requirements to up the password security in LastPass. They just said, "Oh, you're fine as long as you've had a good password." And I'm like, "You can't. That's ridiculous. You can't do that." So where we're going with passwords, and we don't have to get really into this, but we're going to passkeys. And
Mhm.
passkeys is a very different type of protocol that will let you access your material without a password. You know, credit cards,
Right.
right? Credit cards used to be just a number and a code on the back, and that's it.
Hmm.
And an expiration date. That's it. If anybody had that information, they could get anything. What happened a few years ago is that they said, you know what, we're going to embed a chip in here, and that chip will make it so that this will be a unique transaction. Your numbers will not be transmitted, and they will be hidden, and it will be much more secure. And it is much more secure. So passkeys are kind of like that. Instead of having a password, you now have keys that are matched up, that are random, that are complicated, that are much more secure. I don't want to say secure because nothing is really secure,
Yeah.
but
More
they haven't,
secure.
yeah, more secure. They haven't figured out how to do it yet. So passkeys are where we're going. Not every site has, and not every account is using passkeys, and not every account uses multi-factor authentication. So we're still at a very vulnerable place, because a lot of sites you just need a password and a username, and that's it to get in. But we are moving toward having passkeys, which should help the trust. And your big companies, Microsoft, Apple, Google, signed it's not a memorandum of understanding, but it's some kind of a pact that they were going to be
An
moving toward this.
antitrust thing.
Yeah, something. And so that they're all three moving toward this conscientiously, and they all three have.
Okay. So that's where we're going. You feel more comfortable with it? Or did we just say, did we get to the point where we said it's good enough, it's going to happen, and every now and then there's going to be a breach, and that's life?
I'm there.
Yeah.
That's where I live. I have been breached a number of different times. I sign up for everything because I try it out. That's my job. I talk about technology for, you know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands cumulative people. And I try all kinds of things out. And I do things like I use unique um, emails, like fake emails, hidden emails, so that they don't have my email address. I use a generator for different passwords if they don't have passkeys. I use passkeys if I have them. But I'm resigned to the fact that my information is out there. I just try to protect it as much as I can. The average person, I think, gets outraged when these things happen and then does nothing, because it's hard to do something. It's hard to go through and change every single password. It's hard to uh, quit an account and find another vendor and choose another company. It's hard to make these changes. It's hard to install the software that may keep viruses out of there. It takes an extra step. We're all really busy, and so it's challenging, and we get really mad, and we think, oh, they can't do this to us, but we don't make a lot of changes based on the things they have done to us.
Yeah, after the LastPass fiasco, I actually, as soon as they said what happened, I spent the next day and a half changing several hundred passwords.
Mm-hmm.
And to tell you that I'm very comfortable that this has not been compromised, and this again is where it goes to the trust component. I cannot honestly tell you that there has not been a breach recently, maybe even 2, 3, 4, 5 months ago, that the company that was breached and somebody got access to my information, and I don't know what information that is, and they're just not telling me. They're not telling me yet because they care more about their liability than my exposure.
Well, one of the things that has happened in the past few years is that the ramifications for a company for having a data leak, it has gone way up. Besides the reputation, besides the trust, just the financial and liability for a company for doing that. I don't know if you remember back in the day, we had Target being one of the very first big data breaches. Target and Marriott, I think, but Target was everybody who shopped within a certain period of time and used a debit or credit card at Target. And the funny thing is, I never went to Target, and I had gone to Target and bought some like gifts for Toys for Tots or something like that. I had a great time that day. I bought all these balls for a little boy named Jasper or something, all these things. And I used my debit card, and I was caught up in that. And that was huge for them. That was one of the first companies that had to put credit monitoring on all the accounts for anybody who was liable. That was one of the first ones. And yet now, every time this happens, they offer the credit monitoring with different companies. And, they'll watch it for you. You get to watch it there. But it still is, it's much more commonplace. I probably have 3 or 4 different credit watch things. The U.S. government was breached. The Office of Personnel, something like that. And anybody who had to have a background check within a certain period of years, the background check, all of that information was stolen. So my fingerprints are out there somewhere. My social security number is out there somewhere. And everybody I put down as references for that background check, because I was working for Lockheed Martin. It only lasted 9 months, y'all. I am not a Lockheed Martin corporate kind of girl, apparently. Yeah. I quit because I was barefoot under the desk, and they were like, I was like, I'm not sure I fit in here. But I had to go through a
You don't like the color of your glasses.
Exactly. These are glasses.
Yeah, I like them.
I still have monitoring through them. They keep on extending it because it was such a huge thing. So I probably have 4 or 5 or 6 different services that monitor me because of all this mess.
And a side note, one of the things you worry about is your social security number hovering somewhere in someone's hands that is going to start opening accounts or take loans in your name. And one of the tools to avoid that is put a credit freeze in all 3 credit bureaus. So I have it. My entire family, everybody has their 3 accounts with the 3 credit bureaus frozen, so that it's a pain when you buy something and you want to take a loan, or sometimes even if you don't need a loan, but they still want to run the credit check. It's a pain that you have to unfreeze them and let them get access and then freeze them again. And I always worry because sometimes when you unfreeze it for 7 days. And I'm like, well, those are 7 days I'm not going to sleep very well.
Yeah.
Let me move on to something else, and that's Gallup released this is October of last year, but they released an interesting study. They asked what is Americans' experience with crime in the past year, and in the last 12 months, so essentially throughout 2023. The question is, what kind of crimes were you exposed to? And, 1% money or property was taken by force with a gun, knife, weapon, or physical attack. 1 to 3%, and this is between me, it happened to me personally versus it happened in my household, sexually assaulted, and so on. Number one, 11% said it happened to me. 16% said it happened in my household. You or another household member was a victim of identity theft. That was number one. Number four, by the way, you or another, so this is with 8% and 15% in your household, that you or another household member was tricked by a scammer into sending money or providing access to financial account. Then they asked another question, and that is, how often do you yourself worry about the following things? Frequently, occasionally, or rarely, or never. So how many said frequently or occasionally? Being a victim of identity theft, that's number one, 72%. 72% said, I am worried about being a victim of identity theft. 57% being tricked by a scammer. Only 27% worry about being sexually assaulted. This is how pervasive it became. Cybercrimes. So I'm going to go back to my original question and the title of this episode. Given that, one, we have bugs because systems are very complicated. We have cyber attacks. We have spam, which is people trying to get us to do things we don't necessarily want to do. Companies don't tell us that these things happened. Can we trust technology, or do we have no choice?
We have no choice, and we should take different kind of precautions to protect ourselves from there. And I think not to put all of the, I guess I have to put most of the tasks on ourselves to not even trust but verify, distrust, and make sure we're doing all of our little check marks here. It's so upsetting. So Google and Chrome decided I don't know, a year or two ago, that they were going to offer, like, when you put in a password on Chrome, it says, hey, this has been in a breach, you should change it. Do you know how many people go and change it? No. They have recognized that the password you use has been caught up in a scam, caught up in a problem. It is out there. And they say, hey, you should change this. And we don't. So we are trusting them whether we want to or not. And my father was scammed with the grandparent scam. Oh my gosh. He didn't give the $2,000. That was what the grandparent scam, if you haven't heard of it, it's where a small voice on the phone calls up and says, Grandpa, I've been in a wreck. I hit somebody on the road. I was drunk. I'm in jail. A lawyer's going to call you. Please don't tell Mom. Please, please, please. My dad got that phone call, and he went to the bank to give $2,000 to a stranger, and the bank wouldn't let him do it. So we have the bank stepping up for seniors and the bank's taking steps, but it's just so hard to keep up with all the things we have to keep up with. If we all had one password or one thing we had to do and one piece of software we had to keep up with and one device we had to keep clean, it would be fine. But the number of different things we're signed up for, the number of different things we run is just astronomical. And each one of those could be a company we shouldn't trust, or could be something that has already been breached and we just don't know. And even sometimes when they are breached, we don't find out, even if they release it. Sometimes we're not watching the news that day. I do a newsletter and I'm forever telling people about, hey, here's the AT&T breach, here's this breach, here's that, things you need to worry about. And people, I'm always surprised. They write and go, oh my gosh, I didn't know. And I'm like, check your email. It's probably in your email. You got a notification. And they're like, oh, there it is. Like, we're so busy that it's really hard. And there are so many different services. Think about it. Cable, the U.S. Post Office. Did you hear about what just happened with them?
No, what happened with them?
So the U.S. Post Office has a service called Informed Delivery, which I
Yes,
love.
I have
Yes.
that.
So Informed Delivery. Informed Delivery. Inside Informed Delivery was a piece of code that allowed Google and Facebook, I think, to see what mail you are getting. And that was not found by a bad guy. That was found by an investigation by a major tech reporting. Might have been The Verge, might have been, I don't know, Tech Radar. But they did an investigation. They found this random thing, which is what sometimes people do. They find a random unprotected database on the internet. And it's like, oh, this is a breach. This is a leak. But the bad guys didn't necessarily find it. We, the good guys, found it. And we're going to tell you about it. But this investigation revealed that there was tracking in there that showed Google and Facebook knowing what you were getting.
Wow.
And then the US government said, we didn't know. We
It's
didn't know
somebody
that.
else's software.
Yeah. We didn't know that this was in there. Oh my gosh. Well, we'll turn it off. Well, thank you. Thank you. But now you know what political messages I get, what roofing postcards I get. Get a lot of roofing postcards. I don't get it, but
It's probably
like
because of
and
me.
other things. It's crazy because I didn't sign up to have that marketing. Like when you get a loyalty card at a grocery store and you are buying things with that loyalty card, they are keeping statistics, and they have for years, on what you buy, the combination. There were stories, and I don't know if they're true, of all of a sudden you get ads for or postcards for diapers,
Yeah.
and someone's like, "Who's pregnant here?" And the woman's like, "Just bought a pregnancy test," and then this, and like they use this data.
And
And
then
we
you wait to see if you're going to get ads for for baby boy clothes or baby girl clothes.
exactly. Exactly. And now I'll probably
Gender
get
reveal
ads
on
for
the
diapers.
internet.
I've done such a good job of trying to hide who I am, although it's getting harder. I'm getting a lot more spam.
Why? Don't
Um,
hide.
oh no, from the marketing people, that Facebook thinks that I'm a 25-year-old man.
Wait, you aren't a 25-year-old man.
I am not. I am not a bot. I'm a blanky 5-year-old woman. And I am not a 25-year-old man. But when I looked at the profile, it said 25-year-old male. I'm like, gotcha. I'm good with that. That's why, seriously, I got not Viagra ads. I got vasectomy clinics ads.
At 25? What? Isn't it too early?
Well, maybe they thought, based on my other interests, that I should not
Maybe you
procreate. I'm
should.
not ready
Maybe
to.
there should be no next generation for you.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with a company called Alliance Data?
No. What's that one?
Alliance Data is actually the company. It used to be the CEO was a friend of mine, and they used to be here in Plano, and they moved since then to the East Coast. Alliance Data was at the time a $6 billion company, software company. The software that they developed is exactly what you're talking about, and that is, how do I track what you do, all the breadcrumbs that you leave on the internet, so that I can sell things to you that are more appropriate. And I remember once that he gave a talk. I don't remember what was the context of us being there, but he gave a talk and he said, we are the ones who are responsible for that creepy software. And I told him, I don't consider it creepy because, I look for what I look for. And then you keep coming up with, then you should look at this and look at this. And I can't tell you how many times that was what I got because it was a good recommendation. But the best part was what you do is you go to a website to buy something, you put it on your cart, and you leave it there. And it keeps coming back with a 5% coupon, a 10% coupon, a 20% coupon, at 50%, I buy. I just did that yesterday. I put something in several different websites, I put it in my cart, and I waited. And then one of them came back and said, 50% discount. I bought. So there's the flip side to it. But you mentioned the senior fraud. Here's where technology actually becomes the bad actor, or I shouldn't say technology becomes the bad actor because technology is being used by bad actors. Deep fakes. And it starts with voice and it keeps going to facial expressions. Have you seen, I don't know, you know who Jill Schiffelbein is, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know her company. Yeah.
And her company Render, and I interviewed her or she was a guest on this podcast a few months ago, and she sent me the videos, two videos. One of them was of her speaking, the other was of her avatar speaking, and I immediately caught who the avatar was. Why? Because I know Jill, and Jill uses a lot of her hands, so I knew that was the avatar. Then I looked at the other video, and in the other video she didn't use her hands, and I was stumped. I didn't know which one was which anymore. So technology itself is now being used as a tool for fraud as well.
Oh my gosh. You have no idea. You have no idea how advanced and cheap this stuff is. $5 a month. I just did. I hope your followers get a chance to go to my website and look up the voice cloning stuff I did on there. I was able to, I have this software that's $5 a month. $5 a month. And I cloned my voice. And then I had Matt Bauer, who's also a mutual friend of ours. He's a videographer for speakers. I had Matt Bauer just pretend to be, he said, "Hey, Haley." He pretended to be me talking to my manager and asking her to give my credit card number to a stranger. I cloned my voice on top of that. And you could not tell. My manager was fooled, and she's been with me for 4 years, because she thought that was my voice on the phone. And so that kind of fraud is happening. The grandparent fraud there, CEOs calling, saying, leaving a message about, "Hey, I'm on a plane right now, but you have to take care of this for me. I won't be back. I won't be in touch, but go ahead and cut that check to this company or do an ACH transfer or whatever." And it's huge. And then there's the story of a person who showed up for a Zoom call where they said, "Please go ahead and transfer all this money," or whatever. Every single person on that Zoom call was fake.
Wow.
Every single person. And he believed it, and they lost all this money. So this is becoming very common. Yet today, I don't know when this is going to air. I hope it's not going to air in 2026, because then it might be a little bit out of date. But today,
it's airing this coming Tuesday.
Oh, okay. So last week, if you're listening to it on this Tuesday, today in the government, there's a legislator, elected official, who has lost her voice due to illness. She today used her cloned voice to speak on the floor and was almost crying. Randy Travis, the country music artist, lost his voice in 2013 with a stroke. He just cloned his voice. And I was at a concert. I didn't even know they were going to do this. I was at a Randy Travis concert. He travels with a person who sounds almost exactly like him, who sings all of his hits. And Randy and his wife sit on stage, and just the wife tells stories. And Randy is just, his smile is so infectious, but he can't really communicate that way. But they have cloned Randy Travis's voice. And I was in the Mother Church of Country Music, the Ryman Auditorium here in Nashville with the most loyal country fans, with a country music artist who was known because he turned to the traditional country, and he played a cloned voice of his and told the story of how he did it. 3 minute standing ovation. Everybody's crying. Everybody's crying just hearing his voice again. So we've got stories like that. We've got ways you can use this for good, for disabilities, for helping people out, for training. And then we have a lot of bad actors doing a lot of bad things, and you're just like, why do you spend your time doing that when so much good can come of it, and now you're ruining it for everybody?
Yeah. We're getting to the point where we summarize. In a minute, I'm going to ask you how our audience can find you and find more about you and what you do. But before I get there, I want to summarize our advice. What is our advice in terms of technology? And really, how do we answer the question, can we trust technology? So if I go back to what trust is, or who do you trust? First of all, why do you trust? You trust because there is a reward. And because of the reward, you're willing to take a risk. And the risk might come below your risk tolerance level, which means that you have somehow to bridge that gap. And that means that you're going to have to trust people. I say things, but we really don't trust things. When we talk about trusting software, we don't trust software. We don't trust the bits. We trust the people who created them and delivered them to us. But we also need to trust ourselves, because there is a part that we need to play. So when LastPass happened, I changed all of my passwords. That was my role. My passwords are pretty complicated. They're clear in my head, which, about to turn 60, I'm starting to wonder, when will I start forgetting the main password? But the other message I think we're giving out is, it is what it is. We have to rely on technology, and we have to know that there are limitations to how much we can trust it. How do you summarize it?
Absolutely. I think going back to that idea that we trust people, we don't, the question of trust is not about a company, it's about the people who run it. We are so far removed from the people who are making these decisions and running it and programming these things with these big companies, that an extra healthy dose of skepticism is important. I trust Verizon pretty much. I trust Verizon to do the best they can with the data and what they have. But I also take precautions to make sure that if Verizon turns into a really big mess, that I have other options and that I have got some backups, so that, yep, I can trust them. I give them my money every month. They give me service every month. But if they don't work right, I can figure out very quickly, and I would make the change very quickly to some other company that has the big name, that has the reputation that I'm looking for.
And so essentially what we're saying is, technology, and it's not just software, it's computers, it's telephones. It has become so complex, and it's complex for our benefit. It has become so complex that, one, no single company would have the competence of making sure that they deliver something that's bug free. Two, it became such a target rich environment that hackers and other terrorists or just scammers are finding holes, and they will continue to find holes. The one thing that I think would differentiate and help us making choices on technology is really how upfront will companies be with what happened, and not sit on it for 6 months before they share it with us. But other than that, we have to rely on ourselves, and we have to know that we are vulnerable, and that's the price to pay for the convenience that comes with technology.
Yep. And it's definitely convenience, but it's also essential.
Yes,
We can't live in 2024 without having access to online accounts and other things that weren't necessary 20 years ago. but they are today.
Definitely. And if we roll back technology, the next thing we roll back is going to be electricity and cars and the wheel, and we're going to back to horses. So we're just about out of time, but you are a very, very interesting person and you have a lot of interesting content, and I love reading your newsletters. So tell our audience where they can find more about you, where they can reach you.
Well, since I'm your nerdy best friend, it's actually yournerdybestfriend.com. And I put out at least one post a week. I also on LinkedIn, find me. You'll have to learn how to spell my last name, so it may never happen. But that's where I keep most of my information. That's where I try to push out what I've learned in an understandable way so that you can take it and do something creative, do something protective, do something productive with technology.
Great. Beth, you are a great guest. Thank you for being on our show, on the Trust Show. Thank you for helping enlighten our audience to can we trust technology? What are the limitations? I miss seeing you in person. Hopefully one of these days we're going to be in the same room at the same time. I can give you a big hug. Thank you for being here.
So. Thanks so much for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, like it, subscribe to this channel, and get informed when I release more episodes like that. And remember, the answer to this question will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can you be trusted?